This computer. Okay. Shall we start with you, Ricardo? Introduction
Yeah,
wise.
sure, definitely. So, well, hello everybody. My name is Ricardo Diaz. I am a self-taught machine learning engineer. I've been working as a full-time machine learning engineer for almost like 4 years now. Started working with GDGs and was first the leader of the developer student club from Google, and now I joined GDG London. So we're doing pretty nice stuff. And yeah, it's nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I joined GDG only recently, only a few months back, and I'm from GDG Galway, in Ireland, and I am a machine learning intern in Genesis here. So I've been working in it for about 2 months, and then I did it as part of a project for my master's before that. And everybody, welcome. Nice to see you here.
Thanks, Yana and Ricardo. So I'm Jen Ashley, and I'm one of the GDG leads for London, along with Ricardo. So basically, there's a group of us GDGs in the UK and Ireland who got together to organize events. I think there's around 16 chapters that are working together, and we'll be organizing a lot of workshops the next few months, not just on AI ML, but on other things as well, like cloud, AR, VR, web, mobile. So look out for that if you're into those other things. So that's it. I'll hand over to Ricardo now.
No, so
Yeah.
that's someone sharing the screen. So yeah, I will share my screen. I think someone, yeah.
Okay.
Carmel is sharing the screen. His screen right
Oh.
now. Yeah.
Can we let Ricardo share his screen? Did you say someone
I'm not
is
able to do it yet. Yeah, someone. Yeah.
Okay.
If you can try to click the stop sharing. So
Who's the person sharing?
Carmel. Yeah. You there? Yeah. Try to go to Zoom and stop sharing. So we can start sharing.
Yeah. Okay, let me change something, Ricardo. In a second.
Okay, no worries.
I'm gonna make you a host, yeah. Oh, co-host. And I'll do that for you, Yana, as well in a little while. And then I'm gonna change the settings. Okay. Is that working now?
Yeah.
Ricardo? Okay.
Yeah, sure. Now I'm gonna, so now I hope all you guys have the link there. Please let me know that you have the link. So we're gonna start soon. Just, you have to, let me just share my screen real quick. You will see this. Let me, okay. So I hope you're all seeing my screen. You guys, yeah, cool. Well, so first of all, you will see a notebook. This is Codelab notebook. I know some of you are familiar with them. Some of you might not be familiar with them. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through this notebook and we'll start running cells. There's code, there's images. I'm gonna go through it. There's some code for you to write. I'm gonna explain some basic machine learning concepts, specifically for deep learning. And then we get the chance to get our hands dirty and start coding some cool machine learning, and we'll go from very basics and how to build upon that to create cool things that we could then use to make amazing applications. So hope all you guys have this notebook. There's two notebooks. There's one for the solution, and there's one for you to fill in. So I'll go through both. So hope you all guys have the notebook, and yeah. So first of all, I know all of you have some are familiar with Python. Hopefully you are, but if not, Python code is pretty simple and pretty easy to interpret. So hopefully you'll be able to jump into the code and fill in some of the challenges we have below. So this notebook is done by Martin Görner. He's a Googler. It's a very nice Codelab. We're going to go through it, and then you can ask any questions you like. So, well, I hope you like it, and let's begin for the first time. So first thing first in machine learning is preparing your data. I think, so if we go to the basics of what's machine learning and deep learning, basically what you want is for your machine or for your algorithm to learn from data and learn automatically from data without you specifying what features it needs to learn. The good thing is it's able to learn new features and found the features by itself. For example, if you're gonna say, okay, if you're gonna explain a machine learning algorithm, what's a cat or what a cat looks like, you don't have to specify the shape of the ears or how it's different from a dog. All you have to do is pass in a bunch of images of cats and a bunch of images of dogs and tell them which is which in order for the algorithm to learn how to differentiate between them. So how does this algorithm create these interconnections to learn and make sure it is actually learning something? Well, that's kind of like the magic we're going to go through, which is not too much magic. You'll uncover the black box that's deep learning, and you'll see it's easier than you thought. As you know, this is called without a PhD, so you won't need any math. I'll go through some math just for us to understand the basics. I'm not an expert in math because, well, I'm a self-taught machine learning engineer as well. So I just learned doing a bunch of courses, and I know you could also do it too. So let's start with the beginning. Here we have some just parameters. Basically, these are just batch size and epoch. We'll go through them a bit below when we go through our training. And this is just links to our training data. So as you know, notebooks, you can start running code while you go through. And if you want to go and run code cells on this Keras on this Codelab, all you got to do is just, you can click here, or you can just do Shift Enter and you'll run the code cells. So if we start by that, then we have our imports. And then we have this thing, it's important for you to run. It has some secret code here that has nothing to do with machine learning. This is just here for us to see some cool visuals while training. You will see soon why. But you can always reuse this code in your code as well. You could go through it here. But yeah, so let's just run that. And yeah, let's just jump to, let me admit someone, jump to the data pre-processing. So this step is pretty much important, but at the same time gets standard. So you'll repeat these often when you train, for example, image classifier, data will be almost the same. Here we have some helper functions, which we're not going to go through too in detail, but if you have any questions, we can just jump back to them. I'm going to explain how we see our data and what's the problem that we're going to solve today. So this is a very basic problem in machine learning. This was all back to the 1980s. So basically what you want to do is you want to recognize digits, like an image of a digit. You want to know which digit it is. Basically, if you pass in an image of a 6, you want it to be 6. You want our model to predict if it's at 6. So it's the same concept as cats and dogs, but for this time, for simplicity, we're going to use numbers. And yeah, basically what we have in our training data is a bunch of images and a bunch of labels. So labels are key here because labels are the things that tell us what is this thing that my model is looking at. And this happens with this, we could just start training our model. But first, we're going to see how we're going to shape this data in order to be able to pass this data through our model. The first thing we do for this purpose is we first flatten the images, because what happens is our neural network looks something like this. This is a basic one-layer neural network, and it looks like this. Turns out all the pixels that we have here, we want to connect those pixels to each one of our neurons, which we're going to explain soon. And after we connect the two our neurons will learn which pattern of pixels describe an 8, for example, or describe a 2. What patterns of pictures describe these numbers. So as you see here, we have like 10 neurons here, and we have our 28 by 28 pixel images that we flatten. We put just one row next to the other, and we have a 784 pixels or 784 vector. So what our neurons look like, that's kind of like the mystery. Well, basically, each neuron is composed by this equation, which is a linear equation, which is pretty simple. Basically, you have our images, which are X here. We have our weights and our biases. So weights and biases are the key of the key learning parameter of our networks. We use this and we update this in order to know exactly what patterns to look for. But the thing is how we update those and what are they? So basically, each neuron, right? Each one of these connections have one W and one B. And what happens at the neuron is we sum all them up, and that result should give us some meaning. So it should have some meaning after we train it. But how we train it, that's when we jump in. So you see here also we have an activation function. This Softmax function we're going to go through a little bit below. But the main thing is the X times W plus B. That's what we have. That's what we learn. That's what we update in order to achieve that. So quickly before that, we also have another activation functions, relu and sigmoid. They do different things as the Softmax function. This gives this activation functions just change our output in some kind of way. For example, the sigmoid squashes our outputs between 0 and 1. And this gives our model the chance to kind of, we could see this as probabilities like 0 to 1. But I mean, this gives our model the chance to focus on changing the outputs in some way. So the activation functions are just that thing that you multiply and sum, you just change it into some normalized or some other shape that you want them. We're going to go through them. We're going to see what they do, how they affect our model, and how you do it. So basically, we're going to work with Keras. Keras is a higher level machine learning library from TensorFlow. So basically, Keras is just running TensorFlow on the back end, but it gives you tools and easy libraries to jump into, and just code things without having to code backpropagation, or you don't have to code X times W times plus B. It's good for you to know that exists, but you don't have to code it, and you're never going to see it. This is one example on how to create our model in Keras. You see here, it's pretty simple. What we had here, that you see is a bunch of complicated W times B. It's pretty simple. In Keras, all you have to do is to specify a dense layer. A dense layer is actually a layer that it's fully connected. So dense layers can be called fully connected layers, linear layers. It can be called differently. So you can find them throughout different libraries, like different names. But at the end of the day, all they do is connect all the neurons with all the inputs. So as we saw here, like all the pixels are connected to the neurons. That's why it's called fully connected. And we will see why we could even improve that while working with images in this case. But as you can see, it's pretty simple. You can also pick up an activation function that you want. I just specify in Softmax. If you change this to relu, it could be relu. If you change it to sigmoid, it could be sigmoid. Cool. If we see this thing is very interesting to see. You click model summary, and basically you see what's your model, how it looks like, and how many parameters does it have. Right now it has 7,000 parameters. It means that it has 7,850 W's and B's. That's not much to know because of all the connections. If you do the math, it will show you. But then there, we have our model. We know that we can multiply things, and you will get a random thing. But how's W and B like parameterized? How do we change it? So if we want to change W and B, we need to have an idea of how wrong our model is with our random W and B. So basically W and B at the beginning are just random. And what we want is actually for them to change in a way that we can get a significant output. So what happens is, okay, let's do it. Let's see how we can just evaluate this loss or this difference between our outputs and the real thing that we want to output. So as you can see here, there's a loss function. Now we know that we have activation functions, but we also have a loss function. Loss function only compares the outputs of our model to the target values. And in this case, what we have here is we have probability, we have a one-hot encoded vector. So if we go back, remember that our labels are just numbers, because the thing is we want to predict if the image is a 0, if the image is a 1, if the image is a 2, 3, and so on till 9. So what happens is, in order for our model to compare this, we conventionally just put this into this one-hot encoded format. And what happens is, if we have a 6, our one-hot encoded vector will have a 1 where the 6 it's supposed to be, or in the 6th position. So you see that if we have a 0, it will be here. And this works like this because with this specific cross entropy loss, we can have a measure of how wrong our model is by predicting the probabilities or the outputs like this. So in this function, this right here are our labels, and this right here are coming from the output of our model. So if we remember back then, our model has a dense layer with 10 neurons or 10 outputs, 10 filters, and an activation function that's softmax. So we know that from the multiplication that we have above, we will have an output that's coming a W times X times W plus B. But here is where the softmax function comes in. So let me just see if we could just get this to work. Oh, got frozen. Okay, I think my computer is failing on me, but yeah. Let me try to go through the softmax real quick. So softmax, let me just jump into this one. So softmax, as you can see, what it does is it puts the model outputs W times X plus B, it puts them on probabilities, which if you sum them all up, if you got a vector of 10, which is our output, if you sum them all up, it'll give you 1, because what you want at the end is to have one of them to be higher, and that that higher probability will tell you which label will actually be the one predicted. So this here is an example, and I'll go through it real quick. If you have this this output from our model, let's say this is a random output that's coming out of our model, and you compute the cross entropy loss here, you will see that the difference will be something kind of like around the 0.2, because there's 0.2 until it gets to 6. So it's pretty interesting on how this loss function works. You can run this code cell here, and it will give you the actual cross entropy loss that's coming out of this this computation. So then you have your loss. You know how different your outputs from random W's and B's are. How do you actually update W and B in order to fix it? So that's when the magic happens. That's where most of the magic goes to. And it's in this algorithm called gradient descent. So all gradient descent does is it uses the output that's coming, the loss function that you get, and back propagates this. It just computes a bunch of derivatives. You could go through the actual code and how to compute the derivatives and calculus and all that. But at the end of the day, what you have is you have this amazing libraries that you could do it by yourself. But here, I really want to show you how it looks like. For example, let's say this is a W and this is a B. We have our loss, which we want it to be very, very, very small. And what gradient descent aims to do is you have, for example, a high loss here, and then step by step during training, you want to minimize the loss function as much as you can with a combination of W's and B's that could give you the lowest loss function possible. So this is just a optimization algorithm that helps you change W and B in order to get the results that you want. So you say, okay, but this is just too complicated. I need a PhD for this. Well, not really. If you go through Keras, all you have to do to specify gradient descent is to say, I want to use an optimizer gradient descent, and my loss function, I want it to be cross entropy. So it is pretty simple to use, but for you to determine which loss function to use, you need to understand what your outputs are, or what your outputs look like. So as you can see, it's pretty simple, and this thing frozen again. It all froze. Okay, let me see if I could just jump in and start a new one. Technical problems are always amazing. Okay, so okay, so now we know that we can specify that way. Okay. What happens? We could keep running our notebook. Each cell, remember to run each cell as we go through. If you run this cell, it will initialize which loss functions you want to use. And then you kind of like the training loop. I'm gonna describe what we have here. Also, this most of you could be familiar with it. This is accuracy. With Keras, you can also determine which kind of metric you want. When you have classification, you want to have a kind of a measure of accuracy. And what accuracy is, it's basically if you have 10 examples, 10 numbers, and 9 out of 10 you got them right, it will be a 90% accuracy. So it's a good metric to keep on when working with classification. So yeah, we'll see how it looks like. So other than to specify your training, because the thing is you have to iteratively update your weights in order to get your model to be correct. All we have to do is we specify our training data. This training data was specified on the data pre-processing right here, training data, training labels. You could go through that, but basically it's just a TensorFlow data set that we specified above. Then we have the steps per epoch. This is just the total number of steps before declaring an epoch finished. And epoch is, so you have your data, for example, right now we have 60,000 examples of numbers. Epoch is the number of times you go through those 60,000 examples, because you can always repeat and the model will keep improving with time. And if you just go ahead and run this, you'll be able to see how the loss function goes down. So here is where things get interesting, because I've gone through a couple of things that you will say, okay, it looks pretty simple, but let's see what happens. So what happens here during training with the small model that we had up there that had only 10 neurons, it was training was getting like 90% accurate. I mean, it looked good, but let's see exactly how that actually looks like. So if we run this, we have model predict. Model predict is other Keras function that we can use to basically just make an inference. So while training, we iterate through the data and learn. And while inference, we only just multiply times our W's and B's that we have. So after this, we could see that our model is doing pretty good. Some of them I'm not doing good. This thing is an 8. It's a 4, 6, 5. It's doing pretty bad on those easy ones. And from 10,000 examples, we can see that 168 examples are actually not that good. So we could definitely do better. But in order to do that, we need to add more layers. So what happens is now we actually need to add a bit more layers. Let me just go through this. But yeah, you say it's pretty hard to add more layers. It'll get more complicated. So you have to compute more derivatives or things like that. Not quite. So what I want you guys to do now is for you now to have fun. What happens now is we want to add a couple more layers to our network. So basically what we aim to do is to add, let's say, a layer with 2,000 neurons, and another one with 20 units. And then, you know, we have our same network. So what I'll do now is I'll let you guys, if you're following, I'll let you guys to code this. If you have the notebook, try to code these layers. You specify a layer in Keras by just tensorflow.keras.layers. What we want here is a dense layer, and we want 2 of them. So we want to stack them before the last layer, because the last layer is the layer that has 10 outputs, and those 10 outputs are the probabilities that we're looking for. So if we want to learn more complex features, we need to add a bit more layers before. So hope you guys are following, and please just let me know in the chat if you have the notebook. If you're having trouble, let me see. I don't see the chat anywhere. Chat, there you go. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So let me know if you have any questions. You could do it. Jump into. Let me know if it's pretty easy. You have all you need. And let's see what we have. So you have, yeah.
How many layers should I add, or would you recommend for us to add?
So I want you to add 2 extra layers first, which would be 2 extra dense layers. Yeah. You could go through and add those 2. Remember, you should all have the notebook, and if you want to jump into, you could jump into here. There's a pretty useful thing here. So try to create that. Let me know in the chat, guys, if I lost you. If you're lost, if you have any questions. So yeah, feel free to jump in. The idea is for you to ask questions, and yeah, I'm here. So I'm going to give you around 2 minutes to fill this in. Hopefully you could get it real quick, because I know yours not.
So the first parameter there is the units, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. So the last layer has 10 units. Can you explain that again, please? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So our last layer, sure. Our last layer is the probabilities that we are looking for our network to output. So usually last layer is a linear layer with the amount of units that we are looking for our outputs. Why is this? If you guys are getting frozen the notebooks, please let me know, because I'm getting some trouble. I don't know if it's my machine or so yeah. So basically what we have on our last layer are outputs, and those outputs are the things that we compare against our labels. So that's why it's key for us to keep our last layer as our output layer, and that's why I still have 10 because we have from 0 to 9 labels, and what we want is this the shape of our one-hot encoded vectors to be able to compare with what we had. So let me jump into, because I have the image above. Yeah, right here. So this is our output. It's 10 neurons because it's from 0 to 9, and it will give us our computed probabilities that are coming out of the softmax layer. So yeah.
Okay, got you. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's fine. Cool. Let me know if you have any questions. Right here, I want you to try something first, because there's kind of like a secret here that I want you to try for you to kind of understand how things are moving. So this is actually how for example, how I like to learn. If I see things failing, I know why, and then you can iterate through. So basically, with machine learning, what we often go through is an experimental stage where you have something that works, but then it doesn't work too well. You need to know what to change. So that's why you don't need exactly the knowledge on the math, but you actually need to know how things work on the back end, so you know what's going on your outputs. So if you see here,
Ricardo, there was 2 questions in the chat, from one from Linda and one from Amber.
Okay, there we go. Question on the activation function: can we preset W and B and pretrain it amount based on the domain? Yeah. No. Okay. So there's a bit more complex things going on with the layers here. Remember that Keras is working on top of TensorFlow, but you could always change things that are behind these layers. And I'm going to show you real quick if this thing doesn't break on me. I'm going to show you how you could also check that out. Because one thing I like about notebooks is if you run everything and you have things on memory, you could check out how the library works behind. So hopefully this runs. Okay, then show me. Okay, you see here. Let me see. I don't know if you can see the chat. You can see here that has a bunch of parameters. You see that has activation. You see that has units. You see that has use bias, kernel initializer. So that's exactly what you're looking for. So the kernel initializer is what you use to initialize your weights, your W's. And you see that it also has a bias initializer. So your B's, you can also initialize them. So here, by default, is initializing your kernel as a global uniform. It's kind of like a random normal between -1 and 1 type of distribution. And for the bias, you initialize it at 0 usually. But as you can see, if you get your hand through your layers and your functions, you could actually see what things you can change and what things you can specify or not. So that's very, very useful and very cool for the notebooks. Let me see the other questions that we had. Is it normal to mix using different? Yeah. So this is what I want you guys to try, Amber. I'm really glad you asked, because I wanted you to try the sigmoid activation function first, because the sigmoid activation function has some tricky things while working inside the networks. I think this is just gonna keep failing on me. If some of you have had this before, please let me know. Yeah. I mean, this never happened. You know, you test everything before, and then during the thing, it always fails. So you know how it is. But yeah, let me just open the solutions as well and see how it works. Okay, cool. If we see here, I want you to try those two things. Also, if you run the one before, you should see a loss function. For example, I want you to focus on the loss function here. Because what happens is, remember that we used to run, if you were successfully at running our pretty small network, you could see our loss function here is going down. That's good, that's what we want. And you see our accuracy going up. That's good, that's what we want. But what happens when you add 2 more layers and you have sigmoid activation functions on it? I want you to try, and please let me know what happens with the loss function. You have to add your layers here, run it, and then run the training as well. It's the same thing as before. This is training. So you just have to run this and then this. Let me know how it looks like. I'm gonna be aware of the chat, so you can tell me how it looks like. In the meantime, I could tease you like what will happen, and it will crash. So basically, you know that activation functions are good throughout training and in the inner layers. Activation functions are key for output layers as the softmax, because softmax outputs probabilities, and that's what we want. But there are many other activation functions that are meant to be in the inner layers, and they're meant to be used in the inner layers. What happens with sigmoid is our sigmoid function is not meant to be on the inner layers, because what happens is, you know that we have our W's and B's, and let's say W's and B's are trying to push higher values, because I mean, we never know exactly how our W's and B's are going to do. But let's say they want to be higher values. What ends up happening, if you see like the distributions I showed you before, it was pretty hard to notice at first for sight. But if you see what happens with the sigmoid is everything that's too high, it just gets like it just gets to 1. Everything that's too low, it will just get 0. So basically, it will zero out all your outputs and all your or just keep it 1. If your W times X plus B is too high, it will just be 1, and then it will just be 0. So this will make our model just create 1s and 0s, and this is not ideal, and that's why it will explode our inner layers, and it won't be able to go that the gradient descent. That thing, when you compute the derivatives, it will end up being just a mess, this thing right here. So that's why we don't want to use sigmoid on inner layers. Instead, we want to use ReLU. So ReLU, you know, you could say like, how do I know which one to use? Because I mean, if you Google it, there are going to be a bunch of activation functions. So what happens with ReLU is just a max function that basically it doesn't allow you to have negative numbers. All negative numbers will be zeroed out. So that gives our model the distribution for the of our weights are going to be a bit more centralized and positive. But I mean, and that's the math behind it. And what happens is if new activation functions come in, you can actually just add them to your networks easily. And I mean, they say experts say what ends up happening with machine learning and deep learning is you end up reading a bunch of papers, and these papers they exhaustively researched and investigated which one is the best, and then they tell you which one is the best, and then you end up using whatever is the best. So the good thing is you have your knowledge on how these things work. But at the end of the day, if you want to go to research, you have to learn a bit more of the math. But this is, since the aim of this is we could do it without a PhD. We want to focus on the simple stuff. And if you want to create a very good dog classifier, you don't need to have a PhD for that. So good. Hopefully you've changed the activation function to be the ReLU instead of the sigmoid. So I'm gonna do it just right here for you guys, just so for you to know how it's done. I mean, you see I'm copy and pasting things. You see I'm lazy, ReLU, then you have 200 neurons, 60 neurons, and then that's it. That's your network. So as you can see here, if we run this with the ReLU, it will do good. And if you see your loss function is gonna look a bit more like this. Yeah, where is it? Is it this one? No. Yeah. So your loss function is going to look a little bit more. It's a bit higher than 90%. We're getting higher. As we add more layers, we see our network is just learning more because it has more parameters to tweak this, tweak that. Maybe if the 0 is, maybe if the 8 is a little bit to the side, it's actually an 8. So it has like more possibilities to learn. But yeah, so that's why we call it deep learning, because it has the number of layers are deep. We can have networks with hundreds of layers, but as long as you know the basics, you're going to be able to understand like big, huge architectures that are, yeah, could look difficult at the beginning. So other thing I added to there, it is this note right here. Hopefully most of you saw that. So what happens is we have the stochastic gradient descent. So stochastic gradient descent is pretty basic, and it is like the basis of the learning algorithms that we have today. But it turns out, I mean, experts have exhaustively researched different optimization algorithms, and the one that works best these days is Atom. So the good thing about our Keras libraries is you could just say Atom, and you'll have an Atom optimizer running. This supports most of them, not all of them, but yeah, you could just change the algorithms like that. It's pretty simple, pretty easy. No need for any crazy stuff to happen. So yeah, if you run that, you'll see your training. And let's see if we have it right here. So one thing that happens when you keep adding and adding and adding layers is, so it turns out your model gets much smarter than what you actually wanted it to be. Because the thing is, it starts memorizing the data that you're passing in. Because it has, if it has enough neurons, it will start like it will know exactly how the 8 looks like, because it has seen them before, and it starts doing what it's called overfitting. So overfitting is when you fit some data too much, or your training data, that when you pass new data, your model won't know how to actually recognize that. So as you can see here, I've been going through the training. You'd be like, okay, so we have a validation loss and a loss. Like, what's the difference between the validation loss and the loss? So, you know, we have our loss function that it's basically the loss that we're using to train, that we're using to backpropagate. And this is the loss that's computed when you see when the model is seeing the training set, but the model has not seen the validation set. So the validation set is just a part of the data that you won't use for training, because what the only objective of that data is to give you a measure on how the model works when new data comes in. So that's why when we train, we want to compute the training and validation data at the same time, because what happens is we want to know if our model is overfitting or not. So one thing that can tell us if our model is overfitting is that our model does very good on the training data because it's remembering, it's just memorizing the data. And then it's not doing that great on the validation. You see that our validation loss and our validation accuracy is not as good as our validation loss. So you'll be like, okay, but it isn't the fact that we add more layers, it gives them more smart. Well, it gets a bit more smarter, but we can actually tweak this a little bit more. In machine learning, there is something called a regularization. So what you want is to, tell the model, okay, that's not the way. You could change things. You could do it a bit differently. Learn more generalized things. You can shape the way it learns. So I'm going to show you a couple of them here. There are others, but we're going to go through one of my favorites because it actually, when you see it, it makes sense. But yeah, so I'm going to go through. After we train this, we see overfits. We see that, okay, this is terribly overfitting. We're going to go through what's called dropout, and then I'm going to go through learning rate decay. That's something added. I need to explain first what's learning rate, what's that, what's the whole deal. We're going to see. So first of all, we want to know what dropout is. So this right here is our model that we have now. You've seen it before. Let's say the 758 units are here. They're connected to the neurons. Then we have 1, 2, and 3 layers. Then we have our output layer. It should be 10 here, but it's just 1. So, I mean, if it has all the connections to learn, it could just overfit and use the same connections to pass in the same information. But what dropout does is, what you do while training is shut down some neurons, just multiply them times 0. So this W times X plus B will just be multiplied by 0 randomly at a random rate. So let's say you have 10 neurons, 20%, or in this case, 40% of them during training will randomly shut down, and the model will do like, well, I need to go through other routes, and I need to use other neurons to pass this data in order to kind of actually get the good predictions. So this forces our model to not overfit, and that's why it's very famous and we use it a lot. We're like, okay, but this is very complicated. How do we do this? Well, you could add another layer that says dropout. So let's go ahead and do it. So if you guys have the notebook and it's not failing on you, you could see this part here. I've added the layers that we have, and I want you guys to get your hands dirty and add this dropout layer, this weird dropout layer in between each dense layer. So what happens is, if we have a dropout layer here, it will drop out these layers. If we have a dropout layer here, it will drop out these neurons. So we want to shut down this. We want to shut down this one right here, and then we don't want to shut down the output because our output needs to be significant, because that's what we use to compute our loss function. So if you're following, guys, jump into it. It's pretty good. Remember, you call the layers tf.keras.layers. You could use the dropout, and I want you guys to specify a rate. So remember that I told you that if you slide your hand here, you could see what the things you can add to the layer. Well, let's see if you add tf.keras.layers dropout. Oh, dropout. Right. You have a rate. You have an input that's actually a rate. See? So you could just specify this, add the layers yourself, and see how it goes. Run the training. Just first run this. Another thing I want you to try is, and here's where the learning rate comes in. So one thing I want you to try is to update the learning rate. So what's the learning rate? let me go back to our gradient descent algorithm. So our gradient descent algorithm, you see that it is going slowly but surely, going down the smallest route to the loss by changing W and B. What happens is we want to update this small steps by the time, and when you compute your loss or you compute your derivatives, you can see that maybe derivatives are high, and you could end up following this way and then this way because there's much you think it's going down this, but it shouldn't. So what you want is do it smaller. All you do with the learning rate is that you multiply that and you kind of like squish your derivatives a little bit in order for the model to do it smaller. But yeah, so you can change the learning rate from every algorithm, like stochastic gradient descent. You can change it from the atom optimizer that we learned now. So you can do that by using the TensorFlow optimizers functions as well. Let me just go back. So if you see here, you can also change the optimizer. You can choose the atom and then you update the learning rate. So how to update this learning rate? This is a value that's something that you will be like, what value do I use? Like, what should I do with this learning rate? Basically, it's arbitrary and it depends a lot on your data, and you have to know how it affects your training. So this is going to be key, because the thing with machine learning is you run our model, you run your model, you compute things, but you need to know what's going wrong and why the loss is not looking good in order to be able to change things and then improve the loss. So this knowledge on knowing what's wrong is what I want you guys to get a hang of it out of here. So how a bad learning rate would look like? Well, what happens is, since you remember that if we go down the route, it could go too much down, and if learning rates are high, it means it will start going up and down, and it won't be able to work properly. So if this one hasn't fallen on me, yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna go through this one because it has already run everything. Hope you guys were able to code up the dropout. Can someone let me know how that went before we start coding the learning rate? You there? You fall asleep. Oh, by the way, if you want to jump in and unmute yourself and have a chat, also let me know. You can ask questions through the chat, but also you can just unmute yourself and yeah. Come on, guys, wake up. We got it. It's simple.
So for the dropout, do you just put in the rate? That's the only mandatory thing.
Yeah. So basically, the dropout only it's based on the rate, but yeah, it depends on the rate of neurons that you want to shut down, and yeah. So it's basically how you update that. Just add the rate. It should look
the plot like training. Is that the plot training? Does it supposed to do something or? So
the plot training is a little bit of magic. Now remember that we run like a magic cell above. What it does is it shows you that the curve while doing training, which is pretty useful for us to visualize things. But it's not something that changes the training in a certain way. It just shows you the plots.
It executes that after in the next cell, does it? Is it?
Mm-hmm. Like this. It will, every time you get a learning rate, it will plot this, okay. Then this, then this. Yeah. So it's pretty useful, but though it's not doing anything. I'm going to explain you callbacks soon. because there's the learning rate decay, which gets run during training. So everything that's get run during training, it's on callback. So yeah, I'm gonna go through that soon, and yeah. So just so you know, that's not something key, but it's very useful. So keep that in mind. You could steal that code and use it, because yeah, it's pretty cool. So well, hopefully you were able to code the Atom optimizer as well. Let me go through the learning rate now. Okay, there's someone in the chat. How do you decide the input shape for the dropout? Oh, suppose you have the input. Okay, so what happens is TensorFlow uses this kind of graph in the back, and you need to specify the inputs, but only for the first layer. So if you have inputs that are, in this case, we have 28 times 28, which is I think somewhere in this, right at the end. But you could do just 28 times 28. So you only need to specify the inputs of the first layer, and then just the other ones will follow up. This is just because TensorFlow wants to initialize all the weights correctly. And in order to do that, it needs to know like what this amount is. So it can generate the same amount of weights for them to train. So it's just something Keras has and TensorFlow has, that you need to specify this input. But by the end of the day, if you want to add more layers, you could just add them there. No need to use input. It will automatically work on that. I have an attribute TensorFlow Keras says no dropout. Oh yeah, because you need to. It's a layer, so you need to do tf.keras.layers.dropout. So it's all the layers you have in the network will be, you can find them in TensorFlow.layers, TensorFlow.keras.layers, and this is where all the layers can be found. It's pretty cool, pretty organized. So in case you want to look for any new things, you can find them there. I will show you how complex can it get. I read about two types of regularization, L1 and L2. Yeah, so that's one of the things examples. Oh, so you mean how to choose the input layer? Well, so the input layer, it's actually just the size of your data. The only thing you need to specify is how is the shape of your data, and in this case, it will be a bunch of vectors of 158. So yeah, you could just specify that real quick. It should not cause any problem. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, just to clarify my question, basically, when I try to use the drop-off function, I saw the example. If you hover over your mouse, you will see the example. It has a parameter of input shape. So I was wondering how that was decided. Is it related with your inputs, setting? So if you scroll down a little bit.
Here?
Yes, yeah. So the second one, layers, and then
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. So this happens. This is the kind of feature of every layer. The thing is, here they're doing like a test run, and what happens is, since every time you run something, you need to have an input layer. So since here there is no input layer, you can, if you're just gonna run dropout like by itself without doing the sequential model and things like that, if you want to do that, you will have to specify an input, because this is how our TensorFlow kind of works.
Okay, nice.
So that's why.
Basically, that example is a combination of that creating input layer and drop off in one line of code.
that is an example of the whole. It's like creating the whole thing, but in online.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, this got messed up. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, you could also do input shape here. But so there are several ways you could actually work with this. But I think that one of the best ways of doing it is trying to keep it that way, separate. You're also going to see an example I have below, where instead of doing activation here, I could also use the Keras, the layers, the activation value. See? So instead of doing that, you could also do it this way. Though, yeah, it could be changed. It is something that pretty much you could change and you could use in different ways. I'm going to show you why or how would you use it on some a bit more complex problems. So I'm going to go for the regularization. So what happens is the regularization is another technique to improve your model. L2 and L1 are just referred to absolute the absolute values or just squared values. So L1, L2 is yeah. So yeah, basically L1 and L2 will be added to our network. You can add it during training in the compiler. Actually, you could see here if I'm able to show you. I think it should be here. Oh, no, it's not here. There is a way you could add this into your optimizer. I think it's in compile, should be. So good thing is I can show you how I research things as well. So yeah, basically you can include the L1 regularization on your models as well, L1 or L2. But this is just, this is a regularization technique that's used a lot as well. But I mean, for the purposes of simplicity, didn't want to jump into too many algorithms, although we're gonna jump into batch norm. Batch normalization is another one. But yeah, it is able, you can include it easily on your different setups here and compile. I think it should be in loss. But yeah, it should be, it is somewhere there. I could show you. But yeah, it is used a lot. And that's one of the things I like to see, because you see that there are a lot of kind of things that people like, the people research a lot, and then they actually know what's good or what's better. And the good thing for you is to know or be able to jump in and create those things yourself as well. So yeah, let me just hopefully everyone was able to run this this whole thing. If you run then this thing right here, this is where I'm going to jump into the learning rate decay. So as I mentioned previously, what happens is your learning rate could be a bit high. I mean, if it's too high, it will go the steps will be too much, too large, and it could fall into different things. But what happens is, as you're going down your loss function, the actual value that you want to step in, because you're getting closer to convergence, as you're getting closer to it, you want it to be a bit smaller, each step a bit smaller. So what learning rate decay does is, the only thing it happens is, you can see that every time the epochs go on, every time you train your model more, you'll reduce the actual value of the learning rate. So you will start from 0.01, which is the one that I specified here, and then you're going to go a bit slower and slower and slower to go down to a bit of a smaller learning rate, and you'll see the results here. So one thing I want you guys to notice is this peaks here on your training data can tell you that maybe your steps are too high. So this is how you identify these things to be able to change it later. You see peaks here are a bit too high, and it's jumping around loss. So it means that the loss is actually just jumping in and out of one of these things. So loss is jumping here, loss is jumping out. So if you specify a learning rate decay, it will reduce the amount of jumps that you actually end up having. So yeah, it got reduced a little bit. Still, that loss can be specified by different things. So I think this is run properly. So yeah, it also it just helps the model. Like you see here at the end, it is more smooth. Like right here with the validation accuracy, and that's kind of the whole point. You want it to be a bit smoother and doing better rather than doing worse. So that's good. If we visualize our predictions after training with Dropout and learning rate decay, we could see that it is improving a lot more. Our accuracy is better now. This is 2. It's getting confused on a couple of things as well, but at the end of the day, it's doing pretty good. So hopefully you've run this so far, and you're able to follow up with this. You see that training is good, but you know, we're getting a very really high accuracy. What could it fail, or I mean, it was a pretty simple model at the end of the day, and it's a pretty simple task. So I not only want you guys to be able to do the simple stuff, I want you to actually know how complex can it get. So I'm going to quickly go through something called convolutional networks. Convolutional networks are basically just a different way of using W's and B's. It's actually pretty smart. You will see how that kind of works. So if you go through this, you will see our network looks something like this. So all 758 vector values will be connected to every single neuron. And this can have some trouble. For example, if this 8 was actually here in the corner, or if it was moved, or if it was if it had trouble, or if it were in a different way or different shape, our model will not be able to learn it, just because it's learning patterns that it already sees on the whole picture, not just the side of it. So the good thing about this data and why our model performs so good on it, it's because all our numbers are in the center, and they're all kind of like the same thing. So it's easier for a model to learn. But this is not the most effective way of learning an image problem, because we see images as a combination of shapes. The only way, I mean, if you want to identify a cat from a dog, you actually need to look at the ears, the things, different shapes, different ways. But instead of specifying, like if you see something like this is a dog, if you see something like this is a cat, you can actually give, instead of using fully connected layers, you use convolutional layers. Convolutional layers are basically based on this kind of method. All you do is, instead of connecting every single neuron to every single part of the image, what you do is you have a bit of a small window of neurons and weights. And what happens is, when you go through, you have a lot of them. You don't have one. You have you can have a certain amount of filters. So that's kind of how it's called. You can have different filters or kernels. There are a bunch of ways you can call them. And you could go through the image, like you see here, like it's going like this way, this way, this way, and each one of these kernels, it's gonna learn some W's and B's that will be able to identify shapes like lines, shapes. If you actually see your filters on the network, you can actually pick up some of the things that it's learning from. So that's pretty cool about convolutional networks. But you see that's maybe something pretty hard to implement, because you'll need to, like, the back propagation will work differently. W's and B's are different. How do you do that? Well, basically, Keras gives you the chance to go ahead and jump into this. Just add convolutional layers. And what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to jump into, and at this complex layers, I have an example here. I want you guys to be able to jump in here and say, okay, I want to add, and instead of using a dense layer, I want to add a convolutional layer. And there is something also here that's going on that you'll say like, well, where's the input layer? So what happens is, yeah, as I mentioned before, you can add a layer and specify the input shape. That's something that happens. I could just delete this and add my layer here above, like this, like the TF Keras layers input. I could add that, or I could just use this input. So it's just about preference, about organization, and how you want to organize. And what happens with this is, remember that we were getting the huge vector, but we don't want that now, because we want our image as it is, as our 28 by 28. So this is a reshape layer that will grab our inputs and reshape them into this shape. So after that, I have an example of how a convolutional, this is convolutional 2D, because the layer, the kernel looks something like this. It is 3 by 3, it could be 3 by 3, it could be 6 by 6. Right now, you can specify that as a 3 by 3. You can see here, images have like height, width, and depth. In this case, depth is, it will be channels. So keep that in mind. Images have channels. These images are black and white. That's why they don't have RGB. They're not image with color. So keep that in mind. That's why the shape is 28 times 28 times 1. If it will be a color image, you will find a 3 here, because it will have RGB. So they represent green, red, and blue. So yeah. Then you have this, you specify the number of filters. Number of filters is the number of these little boxes they're gonna go through our image, or you could see them like this, not only a 3D box, but you could see them like this for simplicity. Let's say this is an image, and this is one of the kernels going through. It will multiply this, and then it will multiply this, and then it will multiply this. So by multiplying this, it will give us, I get convolved features. It will be kind of like a feature map, and it's pretty cool, because when you train those weights, you see like how your network actually it's learning patterns in for example, first layers will detect lines, corners, things like that. Then more deeper layers will detect things like a ball, a circle, square, like the combination of the features. It will start learning those cool things. The convolutional networks are a whole different concept. I could go through an entire workshop on convolutional networks. I just want you to understand the basics. I could explain, and let us know if you're interested on convolutional networks, because we could go through another workshop on it. But I want you to understand the basics of how this thing work, or how these things look at the image, and how simple it is to just jump into Keras and code it. So hopefully you're all here with me. And right here we have some to-do that I want you to go through. You see that here there is a dense layer. This is our main output layer. Can't fail this layer. This layer always have to be there, because in our case we have 10 classes and we need our softmax activation function, because this is the activation that gives us our probabilities. So don't forget about that. Just an example for you guys, if we had a 2-class problem, which is dog and cat, we could use 2 here instead of 10, but we have 10 classes. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes for you to go through this and ask a bunch of questions, because this is boldly a new thing I jumped into. So hopefully you'll be as excited as I am, and you'll have a bunch of questions.
The flatten function doesn't take any parameters, does it?
Yeah, okay, so this is you're right. Flatten function doesn't take any parameters. Let me just go through this. What happens with the flatten function is flatten only gets what happens when we convolve the image, we start getting like smaller and smaller versions of the image. What happens is if we print what's going on here, we'll see that our image start being a 28 times 28 times 1 shape. And then in the next iteration, after it's convolved, it could be 16 times 16 times 1. And this changes a lot. But at the end of the day, the inputs for our dense layer, remember, it should be a vector. So what flatten does is whatever thing ends here, it will just flatten it out into this shape for us to be able to pass it to the dense layer. So this flatten just reshapes things, and that's why it doesn't need any parameters.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, cool. Linda, question on will the number of W's and B's be different?
So the last layer, the dense layer with 200 units, that has activation softmax, or is that supposed to be smaller?
Okay, so yeah. So since this is a 200 neuron units, you could not add any activation function, but as we saw previously, ReLU works pretty well. So you can add a ReLU to that. Okay,
great, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so for Linda, the number of W's and B's varies a lot here, and it's basically based on the number of filters that we have, the number of these small boxes that we have. So remember that not every pixel is connected to every neuron. But now we have, like, for example, here we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. And that's kind of like how it works. Here we have 9. So that's the number of actual kernels and W's that you have here. You can calculate that. There's a way to calculate how many are they. It's just based on, so let's say if we have a 3 by 3, then we have 16 numbered filters. This is where you specify that. You have 16 of this going through your images. And if you multiply that by itself, you can find that 3 times 3 times 16 will give you the number of filters that you have per convolutional layer. And you will see if you plot it after you finish this, if you're able to plot how many W's and B's you have, remember that there's this useful thing in Keras that gives you your model, like this one, but this one's frozen. So yeah, this thing will give you the number of parameters per layer that you have, and you will notice that if you specify more filters, you have more parameters, and you keep working on that. I'm just gonna close that one and open a new one as always, because yeah. So yeah, that's a way you can see how number of parameters you have, and indeed they will change. So layers will change. This means that our whole thing will change. I'll show you here. Hopefully you were able to go through. This is kind of how it looks like. Another thing you'll notice is there's a padding thing and there's an activation as well. So ReLU has won every single challenges that has gotten. So ReLU is our champion for inner layers. If we want to use ReLU, if you want to have inner layers, we use ReLU. It's our champion. It has worked amazingly. There are other versions of ReLUs like leaky ReLU, other types of ReLUs, but that's our king. So that's why we use it. It's actually a pretty simple function, but that's why we use it. So padding is a bit different. What ended up happening is if we have these filters, if we go through the image like this, like as it is, for example, this is a 5x5 image. This is a 3x3 filter. When we pass this through, our network will end up like creating this smaller feature map. And the smaller feature map, it could have some trouble. So all padding does is adds zeros around the image. And what same means, it will add zeros aiming for the output to be same size of the image. So that way, it doesn't matter how we run our filters, it will give us something that has kind of the same shape. Hopefully we're able to run that. But yeah, so padding, same. You have padding is something that we can also go through in another convolutional networks workshop, but also strides. Strides is, you go through each one of these, you move this filter through your image. So strides is how much you jump into. So you could jump into, first you have the first kernels, then you jump into 2 times, or you can jump into 1 time. That can reduce the size of your image. So this is a whole complex thing that's going on here. And you can see that you start from kernel size with this, which is the size of your small cube or your small square. Then you have the number of squares that you're going to run through the image. Then you have the activation, then you have the padding, then you have strides. It could get a bit complicated. And that's why convolutional networks could be a whole topic. There are other things you can add here, but I just don't want you to get too much complicated. I really want you guys to have an idea on how you can code this overly complicated thing in just 1, 2, 3, like 10 lines of code or less. And yeah, so basically, hopefully you were able to get this. This is yeah, how the solution I did look like. And yeah, so how's it? Anyone has any questions about this? Because I know this must be a whole new thing. And also, one thing we're never missing on our data are dense layers. And I'm going to go through this real quick. So what happens is, as I mentioned before, here we have 12 kind of like filters. We first have 12 filters. And when we run this, we get our 12 filters. We see that we have no stride. That means strides equal to 1. So that's why same padding made it up. So our thing has not changed. We have only 120 parameters. Then in the next layer, we see that we go down ×2, and we go down ×2 because our stride is 2. Then we go down again ×2, our strides 2. We see that number of filter 24, 32, 32, we go down, we see number of parameters here. Now it gets a bit higher because we have 32 filters going through 14 times 14 plus, remember that this is just our W's. We have some B's as well for each kernel. Then we have our dense layer that connects. We have our flatten, remember flatten, all we aim to do is this is the shape that we get from the convolution. Then flatten just grabs this shape and flattens it up in a vector. And then you can run this through your dense layer and then run it by your last layer. So we have a total of 354,000 parameters. And that's kind of like how it looks like your model at the end. Hopefully you were able to go through it. Let me know if not, if you have any.
So not everybody will get the same results as you, right?
So everyone should get the same if you go through, if you have, for example, 24 filters, 32, if you have a kernel size of 6, you could change it to 3, and that gives you different, it will give you a different value. But at the end of the day, if you have this kind of structuredized, you should see something like this. And yeah, after we run this, we'll see a little bit more on what we can achieve with this, like how does it affect our loss. So our loss is what we really care about. Doesn't matter how complex our things are. If you can get a better loss or a better accuracy, that's the only thing that matters. So yeah, hopefully you will be able to code this up. We'll keep our Atom optimizer like that. Of course, we're still gonna have our learning rate scheduler, which will reduce our learning rate. And we'll see our results here. As we can see, there's something going on here. I want you guys to tell me what happened. And also, you can see definitely it has improved. It's now like 98.9% accurate, or at least on the training set. So there's a question for you guys. I want you to tell me what happened here. Like, what do you pick up from the loss? Come on. This loss is
I think it's overfitting.
Overfitting, that's it. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so it happened because I mean we have a bunch of parameters, as I mentioned, and we didn't add any regularization. So what ends up happening is that you, as a machine learning engineer, you see your loss and you'd be like, oh wait, so it seems like our validation is going up and training is going down. So it could be overfitting. What can we do? We can add more regularization. So that was a good one. Thanks, Linda. Hopefully everyone was able to pick it up as well. And yeah, so you see that even though you change to convolutional networks, it's performing better though. It's performing a lot better. However, it also gets affected by overfitting. So the knowledge that you get here is that all your networks can be overfitted. You need to have a validation set. You need to have a training set. You need to be aware of what regularization can you use. And this is where you say like, okay, but these are convolutional networks. How am I supposed to add dropout to this? Like, it will drop out every kernel, or it will shut down every W's and B's. Well, you could argue that there is dropout. There is a functionality for dropout. If I add a dropout layer on a convolutional network, you could shut down the layers. You can shut down the neurons, and you could learn a bit more generalized features from the images. But in this case, I really want to show you other things because we already checked out dropout. Let's check out another regularization technique that's called batch normalization. So batch norm, you see, like this is a bit more complex function. All I want you to get here is Z is your main like output. This is your output of each layer. So let's say each layer has an output Z. So this is Z, this is Z. What you aim to do with batch norm is you want to keep that Z into certain type of you want to keep it on certain, you want to constrain it into a certain distribution that could help you can help you like avoid that overfitting, that thing that, so if you force your model to do something, it will just not overfit. So that's kind of like the whole idea. If you force every layer to be in some kind of distribution, it will learn how to create this, how to do this without overfitting. So that's kind of like the whole idea. Even though like, if you see it's performing pretty well, we could do better. We could always do better. I forgot to show you how the results look like, but yeah, I was too excited to jump into the batch norm. So one thing is I don't want you guys to because it can get very complicated. Didn't added any like to do thing. Didn't want it to like overwhelm you guys with a bunch of stuff. And there's other thing I want to explain here that's going on. If you want, you can delete this and try to run it yourself, or if you'd like. All this, it is the same convolutional architecture that we had previously. The only difference is now we add batch norm. But there's a key here in batch norm. Since batch norm is changing our outputs, we don't want, and we still want our ReLU on top of our outputs, we need to add our ReLU after we add batch norm. That's when we start using the layers.activation, Keras.layers.activation, because we no longer want to activate here because we're going to still change the outputs here, and the ReLU is just going to have no meaning if we added before the batch norm. So that's that. It start getting a bit more complicated, and you'll say like, okay, but at the end of the day, what if you change your outputs, you always want to have your activation at the end, because your activations will your activation, for example, ReLU, is the thing that's gonna go before your layer. So what you need to be aware of is before each layer, you want to have an activation, because I mean, it's proven it works pretty well. So you will need to aim to have it before a layer instead of adding some kind of regularization in this case. So you can see here that if we add a batch norm to every single time we run convolutional layers, we have batch normalization. This will squash our outputs into this distribution. Then we run our flatten layer. We can add a dense layer as well. We could see that batch norm can also be used on dense layers. And we also can add dropout on top of batch norm. So you see that for our networks and our neural networks, we have a bunch of building blocks. And what we end up doing is just combining these building blocks in a certain way that we can get better outputs, or we can get our desired like main architecture. The thing is, when you start, you have an idea like, okay, so if I want to work with images, I have convolutions. So let me add a bunch of convolutional layers. Then, I mean, you see your model overfitting and you'll be like, okay, so it's overfitting. Let me add some batch norm, or let me add some dropout. And you add dropout. You see how your loss goes. You see how your model is performing. So that's kind of like how the machine learning works. You'll be like creating things, then, okay, loss is wiggly, loss is going up and down. So it means learning rate is high. Let me just reduce the learning rate, run again. So it's an iterative process. And what I want you to know is how to identify these things and change things in order to be able to create your own architectures, and how to start, because that's one of the main issues You sit there, there's a blank notebook, how you start. Okay, so if we run this with the regularization, the batch norm, the dropout, learning rate decay, it's all in, we could see that we have successfully reduced our overfitting. Our model is super accurate, it's almost like 99 or 100% accurate. And we're getting like amazing results. Okay, it's a simple simple problem, but it is, I mean, you could use the same if you want. After you could finish this, you could go through and get another data set, cats, dogs. You can take pictures of your cats, take pictures of your dogs, and then, you know, reshape them as this. You can run it as input of this notebook. You can go through those images as well, and you will see that how amazing things you can create with this. And I'm just gonna tell you a funny story about this whole thing, and it is when I started working as a machine learning freelancer, my first ever job was creating a facial expression algorithm. So all I had to do was grab a bunch of facial expressions and a bunch of pictures of faces, and then you have an expression that's happy, sad, or angry, and all you do is you have, for example, 3 outputs. You have same images, 28 by 28. Then you run through and train in the same way, and you can get a very accurate result. And I mean, having this knowledge allowed me to get my first paid as a machine learning engineer. And this is the same knowledge you're getting here. Like it's so important to know that the things you're able to do with all you will learn or you're learning here, it's pretty awesome. So this same basic knowledge took me from 0 to 4 years machine learning engineer. So yeah, hope you liked it. And yeah, at the end, you can see how it performs. You see that it's just mistaking on couple errors only from 10,000 examples from the test set, validation set. And yeah, you see you create a very powerful model. Did you manage to run it through?
Yeah, it's just curious. I mean, I've got the same pattern as you, but it's not exact. So I'm just, so there is some calculation issues, is it? Or
so
do
one
I
thing,
can share my screen here? Can I share?
I think so,
No.
but so there's one thing. Let me see if I can give you access. But there's just one thing they need to take into account, and that's every time you create a model, you initialize weights randomly. So there's a randomness in the weight creation, but it should look something like this. So if not,
Yeah, I mean, the accuracy looks almost the same as you, but the charts, the pattern is the same, but it's not exact as yours.
okay. Oh, might be a plotting issue. Let me see. Hello. How do I? Jana SOS. How do I give the share screen things? Don't know.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
What were you
So
trying to
can
do,
you?
Ricardo?
Oh yeah, Jen. Yeah.
I'm back, yeah.
I just want to give some permissions to share screen.
Oh, okay. Hang on. Let me. Who's the person who's gonna?
Shakti.
Shakti. Okay, hang on a second.
Yeah. By the way,
Okay,
guys,
Shakti.
if
Yeah,
you
you should be
also
able to
want
share.
to,
Okay.
yeah, let me just stop sharing. So you could go ahead. I think stop sharing. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay, so Google Chrome, yeah. I'm not sure whether that.
It's still loading for me.
I don't know whether you can see.
It's still loading.
Nope. Do you want to try again?
Did you press the share screen, was it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Try to check the plot training tool that I gave you. It has something wrong. It's not wrong, but is a way to kind of like zoom in.
Okay.
There's a.
Can you see Can you see the screen? Yeah.
Not yet.
No.
But for all of you guys as well, there is it's not an error, but it's a difference between my outputs and yours. And it is that the plot training tool, the plot training function that we have on after the convolutional layers, the zoom is 16. And if you want to get the same results as me, you have to specify the zoom as 1. And yeah. So just so you.
Yeah. Shakti, sorry. Did you select a tab or a screen, or what are you
Screen?
seeing?
Yeah. Screen. Yeah. Yes. So yeah, screen.
Because it's not appearing here. Are there other options?
Yeah. Maybe it's my.
Yeah, I think there's
My Apple. Apple is denying something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. They always do.
Yeah. Could be
But
Apple's privacy. It could be Apple's privacy. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna show you real quick. The change should be. So change this. Zoom is 16. It's just the way things are plotted. This zoom means you want to see like a bit zoomed in the plot. So try to fix this zoom to be 1. And I think this zoom is also 16. So try to make it 1. It's a little mistake there on the notebook. But of course, I'm going to give you access to the solution notebook that I have here. And you will be able to get all everything that you need from the solution as well. If you guys didn't manage to solve everything, it will be a solution. Don't get frustrated. It's fine. Maybe I speak too fast. It's fine. So I'm going to drop the link for the solution here in the chat. Perfect. I fixed my zoom to 1. Now graph looks like here. Yeah, I knew that. Everyone was counting that error. My bad, guys. A little number there. But yeah, that's because sometimes you want to really see like close what's going on. But yeah, my graphs had that plot zoom. So thanks all of you to get to the end and running everything. I hope it was fun. I know there are a bunch of stuff in convolutional networks that I would have loved to go into, but I just wanted to show you how powerful it is when you're learning. And yeah, if you're excited to learn more, let us know. We're planning to run more advanced workshops. And yeah, we would love to hear your feedback as well. So yeah, no worries. I'm glad you guys liked it. Also, let me know. I mean, any questions you might have. I think one of the most powerful things here is asking questions. So don't be afraid to ask questions now. If anything, I mean, if it's just a small thing, jump into because yeah, I'll be more than glad to go through everything again if you want.
Thanks, Ricardo, and thanks for sharing the notebook as well. I think I'll be going back to it here and there. The nice explanation.
Yeah. Also, like you could grab the notebook code and copy and paste to whatever you're doing, and yeah. Awesome. Great. So I think awesome. Thank you. Thank you all, Linda, Daisy. So this will be recorded. I guess it'll be uploaded somewhere, so you could just go back and check out whatever I explained. Please don't hesitate to respond to the feedback survey, and if you are looking for more. So yeah, thanks guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Ricardo and Yana and Shalky, if she's here. And thanks everyone for joining.
Okay,
Awesome.
thank you.
Okay, and we're done, right?
Yeah, I did
Oh, no.
share the completed version of the notebook. Yeah, it is. Oh, it should be somewhere around there. Yep. Try to copy that one. Save it. Also, if you guys want to have any other questions, and you have, I mean, you want to know everything else, I'll add my LinkedIn here. You guys can feel free to send me an invitation, and if you have any questions, you want to have any feedback about the session. Yeah, I'm here for you guys.
So, sorry, Ricardo, you're sending them to me, the messages there, but I'll
Oh,
be
yeah,
sending them. Sorry, that's my bad.
Everyone, yeah, everyone. Yeah, I think I clicked some respond or something. Yep, there you go. Looking forward to see what you build. So if you build something amazing, let me know. Seems pretty simple, but it's powerful. So cool. Well, I think we'll end the session here. So thank you guys. See you in the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care,
Bye.
guys. Have a nice evening.